PAIGE, the anti-diva, the woman who became a two-time champion at just 21 and helped kickstart the women's revolution. WWE sold you the fairy tale of a raven-haired rebel, a wrestling messiah destined for a Hall of Fame career. But behind the championship goal lies a darker, more chaotic story the company wants to keep buried. It's a career that spiraled into a storm of controversy, scandal, and personal demons. For every incredible high, there was a devastating low that threatened to swallow her whole. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on the moments WWE is hiding about one of modern wrestling's most compelling and tragic figures. This is a side of the story you were never supposed to see. If you're ready to dig into the uncomfortable truths, hit that like button and subscribe, because we're just getting started. The Reed Flair promo, a line WWE wishes it never crossed. To really understand the turbulent path of Paige's WWE career, we have to start with a moment that, even by pro wrestling's often blurry standards, went way too far. It was November 2015, and Paige, no longer the fan favorite, was now a bitter heel in a feud with the Divas champion, Charlotte Flair. The two were set for a contract signing to build heat for their Survivor Series match. But what actually happened became one of the most infamous and uncomfortable segments in the history of Monday Night Raw. As the two traded verbal jabs, Charlotte brought real-life emotion into the storyline. She spoke about her journey, crediting her drive to her late brother, Reed Flair, who had tragically passed away in 2013 from a drug overdose. It was a raw, vulnerable moment. This is where a normal wrestling angle would have the heel mock the hero's sentimentality, but the script handed to Paige took a sickening turn. In response to Charlotte's heartfelt tribute, Paige coldly said a line that sent a shockwave of disgust through the wrestling world. "Your little baby brother, he didn't have much fight in him, did he?" The reaction was instant. The live crowd gasped in horror. An enraged Charlotte lunged across the table, and a brawl broke out, but the damage was done. On screen, it was supposed to be the ultimate heel move. Off screen, it was a disaster. Fans and critics were appalled. WWE had crossed a sacred line, exploiting a real family tragedy for a cheap reaction. The backlash was huge. Even Ric Flair, Charlotte's legendary father, was blindsided and heartbroken, revealing on his podcast that nobody had warned him. "I started crying while I was watching it. Nobody called me, and nobody has called me today," he said, expressing how sensitive the wound still was. So why would WWE want to hide this? Because it represents a massive failure of judgment from the very top. While Paige delivered the line, it was a scripted moment approved by creative. Years later, it was reported that Charlotte Flair herself might have pitched the idea, believing it would add intensity. At the time, though, that wasn't public knowledge. It looked like WWE had either bullied a young performer into using a real-life death as a prop, or had recklessly approved it without a second thought for the human cost. The segment was blasted as tasteless and exploitative, a black eye on the women's revolution they were so eager to promote. WWE quietly tried to scrub the moment from history, editing the line out of video packages and YouTube clips. They want you to remember the feud and the matches, but they desperately want you to forget the moment they decided a family's real-life pain was fair game for entertainment. The wellness policy violations, a public battle with the machine. When 2016 rolled around, Paige's on-screen momentum started to fade. But behind the scenes, a much more serious battle was brewing, one that would put her in direct conflict with WWE's corporate machine. In August 2016, on her 24th birthday, WWE announced Paige was suspended for 30 days for her first violation of the company's talent wellness policy. At the same time, her then-boyfriend, Alberto Del Rio, was also suspended, sparking widespread speculation. Paige and her family immediately pushed back. Her mother claimed on social media that Paige was dealing with a neck injury and was on prescribed painkillers. Paige herself said the failure was a procedural issue and not a failed drug test. It was her word against the company's, and WWE doesn't like its authority challenged. This public dispute undermined the image of the wellness policy as a fair and necessary tool. Just as her 30-day suspension ended, things got worse. In October 2016, WWE announced a second suspension, this time for 60 days. Paige's reaction was explosive. She took to Twitter writing, "Same tea, different day. Kids, please don't get prescriptions or doctor's notes. Not acceptable." The message was clear. She felt she was being punished for taking medication for her neck injury, which now required surgery. The fight was now an all-out war. In a rare move, WWE released a statement to the New York Post, stating that Paige had tested positive for an illegal substance, not a prescription drug. This was a PR nightmare. They were in a he said, she said, with a top star who was also claiming unfair treatment while injured. The truth, it turned out, was more complicated. A year later, in a painfully honest interview, Paige came clean. She admitted that during a dark period, overwhelmed by her career-threatening injury and a toxic relationship, she had turned to illegal drugs. She confessed she had lied about the second violation out of shame, not wanting to tarnish her image. While her honesty was brave, the entire saga is something WWE would rather forget. It showed a complete breakdown of trust between the company and one of its top assets. It pulled back the curtain on the pristine, corporate image WWE projects. For months, fans saw a messy public battle filled with accusations and denials. It wasn't a storyline, it was a real-life crisis playing out for all to see. WWE wants to be seen as a supportive family that provides world-class medical care. The two suspensions, Paige's angry denials and her eventual confession, tell a much more complicated and human story, one that's far too raw for the glossy world of WWE. The turbulent relationship with Alberto Del Rio, a PR nightmare. Nothing in Paige's life caused more chaos or generated more negative headlines than her turbulent relationship with fellow wrestler Alberto Del Rio. Their romance went public in May 2016 and quickly became a whirlwind of public drama, run-ins with the law, and constant headaches for WWE management. On the surface, it seemed passionate, but it was a relationship fraught with turmoil that repeatedly threatened to derail their careers. WWE, obsessed with its family-friendly image, was reportedly unhappy with the pairing from the start. The company's displeasure became obvious during the 2016 WWE draft, when Paige was sent to Raw and Del Rio to SmackDown, a move widely seen as an attempt to separate them. It didn't work. Their joint wellness policy suspensions only added to the perception that the relationship was destructive. The drama kept escalating. The most infamous incident happened in July 2017 at an Orlando International Airport. Eyewitnesses reported a loud, heated argument between the couple, with accusations of abuse and drug use being thrown around. Leaked audio captured a hysterical Paige yelling at Del Rio to "Leave me the fuck alone." Police were called, and though no charges were filed, the incident report noted that Paige was considered the aggressor in that particular dispute. This was the kind of scandal WWE dreads. It wasn't a script. It was a real-life domestic dispute involving one of their top female stars, splashed all over gossip sites. Del Rio had already left WWE, but Paige was still under contract, putting her in a difficult position. The relationship became a constant source of negative press, with Paige's own family publicly voicing their disapproval. Years later, after the relationship ended, Paige made harrowing allegations of physical and mental abuse against Del Rio, describing a pattern of being trapped and beaten. For WWE, the entire relationship was a fire they couldn't put out. It involved domestic disputes, screaming matches, and serious allegations of abuse, all of which contradicted the empowered image they were building for their female superstars. They couldn't control the narrative. They want you to remember Paige the champion and Paige the inspiration. They are desperate for you to forget the period where her life was defined by a toxic relationship that played out like a slow-motion car crash. This story is a roller coaster, and we're just getting to the most intense parts. The amount of public scrutiny and personal hardship Paige went through is almost unbelievable. If you're finding this deep dive compelling, take a second to hit that like button and subscribe. It helps us keep digging into the stories the powers that be don't want it told. Now let's get back to it, because the next moment is maybe the most devastating of them all. The unthinkable invasion of privacy, the leaked content of all the scandals that have plagued Paige's career, None was more personally devastating than the events of March 2017. In a disgusting violation of her privacy, personal and explicit photos and videos of Paige were hacked and leaked online. The content, which involved other wrestlers, was never meant to be seen by the public. It was stolen and weaponized against her on a global scale. The fallout was catastrophic. Paige was already in a fragile state, sidelined with a major neck injury, and dealing with her WWE suspensions. She was shamed, ridiculed, and objectified. In a heartbreaking interview, she recounted how the leak destroyed her mental health. She developed stress-induced anorexia, and her hair started falling out. Strangers would make vulgar comments to her in public. The constant humiliation pushed her to the brink, and she admitted she contemplated suicide, feeling so degraded she didn't want to be alive anymore. For WWE, this was a massive crisis. The company was promoting Fighting with My Family, a heartwarming movie about Paige's life produced by Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Now, the inspirational subject of their film was at the center of a major sex tape scandal. It put them in an impossible spot. Paige was the victim of a crime, but the content also involved another active employee, Xavier Woods, bringing a kind of attention the family-friendly company runs from. WWE's response was notably quiet. Publicly, they said almost nothing. They couldn't punish the victims, but they couldn't ignore it either. Behind the scenes, the company was reportedly supportive, but their public strategy was silence, hoping the storm would pass. They continued with her movie, signaling they were standing by her, but they never addressed the leak directly. This silence is exactly why it's a moment WWE wants hidden. To talk about it is to bring up a host of uncomfortable truths: the dark side of fame, the vulnerability of performers, and the brutal misogyny Paige was subjected to. The story of the leak isn't a wrestling story, it's a story of trauma. It's about a young woman who made a mistake in trusting someone, a mistake that came back to haunt her in the most horrific way imaginable. WWE sells narratives of empowerment. The reality of what Paige went through, the depression, the anorexia, the suicidal thoughts, is a story of profound suffering. It's too real, too dark, and too far removed from the scripted world of sports entertainment. They want you to remember Paige in the ring, not the victim of a cruel, criminal act that scarred her for life. The boss's blunder, Triple H's insensitive joke. Even after surviving the horrors of the leak and her public battles, the slut-shaming that had attached itself to Paige's name continued to follow her. In a truly baffling moment, that mockery came from the highest level of WWE management. In January 2020, Paul Triple H Levesque, WWE's executive vice president, made a deeply inappropriate joke at Paige's expense during a media event. When asked if injured stars like Edge and Paige might return to the ring, Triple H gave a thoughtful answer about their long-term health. He mentioned Edge had a wife and kids. Then he delivered the punchline: Paige, maybe, she probably has some kids she doesn't know of. The room chuckled, but for Paige and many others, it wasn't funny. The comment was a callous remark that played directly into the sexist abuse she had endured for years. It was a cheap shot that reinforced the narrative that had caused her so much pain. Paige's response on Twitter was swift. "Even my boss jokes about me. No wonder you guys still do it too." She was heartbroken that a man she looked up to would make her the butt of such a cruel joke. The backlash against Triple H was fierce. What's more, other prominent women in the company, like Renee Young and the Bella Twins, publicly condemned the remark. It was a rare case of talent openly criticizing a top executive. The incident blew up. Here was a leader of the women's evolution engaging in the exact kind of locker room humor the company claimed it was moving past. Realizing his massive mistake, Triple H went into damage control. He called Paige to apologize and then issued a public apology, calling it a terrible joke. But the damage was done. The incident exposed a hypocritical underbelly to WWE's corporate messaging. It demonstrated that despite the public narrative of empowering women, a culture where such a joke could be made by a top executive still existed. This is a moment WWE wants buried. It makes one of their most powerful figures look foolish and insensitive, and it undermines the company's carefully curated image. The final bell, a career cut tragically short. Through all the scandals and turmoil, the one place Paige always found salvation was inside the ring. It was her home. After more than a year away recovering from neck surgery, she made a triumphant return to WWE in late 2017 as the leader of a new faction, Absolution. It was a fresh start. The anti-diva was back, and it felt like she was finally ready to reclaim her throne. But just over a month later, on December 27th, 2017, during a live event in Long Island, tragedy struck. In a routine spot, Paige took a kick to the back from Sasha Banks. Because of her previous surgery, her neck was fragile. The impact caused her to collapse to the mat. The referee immediately threw up the X symbol, signaling a real injury. The match was stopped. What followed were terrifying moments of uncertainty. Paige later revealed she experienced temporary paralysis, unable to feel her arms or legs. Lying there, she knew her career was over. Though she managed to walk out of the arena with help, the prognosis was dire. Her neck was too unstable to ever compete again. At just 25 years old, Paige's in-ring career was finished. On the Raw after WrestleMania 34, Paige officially announced her retirement in a devastatingly emotional speech. The tears were real, the heartbreak was palpable, and the fans gave her a standing ovation. So why would WWE want to hide the specifics? Her retirement speech is a famous clip, after all. It's because the story of how it ended is a brutal reminder of the physical toll of the business. It shows that even the biggest superstars are painfully human. More than that, it's the tragic end to what should have been a story of triumph over adversity. She had overcome everything, only for it all to be snatched away in an instant. Paige has been clear that the injury wasn't Sasha Banks' fault, but the incident itself, a career ending on a fluke kick at an untelevised show, is not the glorious finale WWE wants for its legends. It's anticlimactic and heartbreaking. They will celebrate her championships and her legacy, but they would rather not dwell on the random, devastating moment that brought one of the most promising careers of a generation to a premature end. The story of Paige in WWE is a paradox. She was a revolutionary figure who helped change women's wrestling, and a cautionary tale of a career thrown into chaos. Her official WWE legacy is that of the anti-diva, the first NXT Women's Champion, and the youngest Divas Champion ever. It's the story told in the movie Fighting with My Family, an underdog who achieved her dream. But that's a heavily edited version of the truth. The full story is far more complex. It's a story of a young woman who battled a system that wasn't always on her side, marked by professional missteps like the Reid Flair promo. It's a story of a public war with the company's wellness policy, exposing her own struggles with substance abuse. It's a story of a toxic relationship, a horrifying invasion of privacy that left her suicidal, and a boss who used her trauma as a punchline. And it all culminates in a tragic injury just when she was getting a second chance. It sells fairy tales. The unvarnished story of Paige is too real and too messy for that brand. It shines a light on the immense pressures on its performers and the devastating human cost when things go wrong. Yet the ultimate truth of her story might be one of resilience. She survived it all. She faced public humiliation, personal demons, and a career-ending diagnosis, and she's still standing. She made an unthinkable return to the ring in AEW as Saraya, and even became their champion. While she has since parted ways with that company, she proved her story wasn't over. That comeback, however, is a chapter WWE can't claim. They are left only with the highs and the devastating lows that happened on their watch. And while they'll forever celebrate the highs, they will do everything they can to make sure the dark, chaotic, and truly human moments remain hidden in the shadows. What do you think is the most shocking part of Paige's story? Is there another wrestler whose hidden history you want us to uncover? Let us know down in the comments. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.